All right, that's the cue, Tim Switalski, that I am about to introduce you and welcome
Okay.
all of our participants to this concurrent session, 12:15 to 1 o'clock, New York, Toronto time zone. I am recording. If you didn't hear that announcement, we often get people who express an interest in these sessions who were unable to attend or later discover about the Creativity Expert Exchange. So we record these sessions, we post these in YouTube. If you prefer not to be seen, then we invite you to mute your camera. But I know for myself, and I would imagine Tim is the same way, we do like to see facial reactions and nonverbals and so forth, but the choice is up to participants. So just a reminder, this is being recorded. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this session. My name is Gerard Puccio, longtime chair of the Center for Applied Imagination, graduate of the program, also an undergraduate minor in the program at Buffalo State. So long history at Buffalo State, and of course committed to the mission of the department to ignite creativity around the world, facilitating the recognition that creative thinking is a life skill. So one of the great benefits of this community is that you have people like Tim Switalski who are part of this community. And I just made a reference to the mission of the department, which is a very bold mission when you're only 4 full-time faculty to ignite creativity around the world. And very much our ability to be able to achieve that mission is a result of the collaboration that we have with members of our community. I'm proud to say Tim is a former student of mine. Tim came into the department shortly after I became department chair. I was 12 years old at that time. I think Tim was maybe 16 years old. So we were prodigies. And as Dr. Keller Mathers mentioned earlier today, our view about students is that they're students for a short while, but then colleagues infinitely going forward. And Tim very much has been a great colleague. So I'll give you his bio. I'll make a few more comments and I'm going to turn it over to Tim. Tim is founder of Darwin Associates, providing training, facilitation, coaching, and consulting services to international clients focusing on emotional intelligence, change leadership, creativity, and innovation. He is a founder of the CREA conference, which takes place annually in Italy and considered one of the premier creativity conferences in the field. I've been there. Amazing conference and a beautiful venue. Highly recommend it. Tim was the former director of leadership development at Buffalo State, where he provided learning and development opportunities for staff and faculty. His leadership program won a national award from the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, very prestigious organization in the US. He is published in the Routledge Handbook of Collective Intelligence for Democracy and Governance. When the concurrent sessions were announced and we sat down as a faculty and looked at the concurrent sessions, I have to admit I grabbed this one as the moderator. One, because I respect Tim. Two, because Tim's presentation dovetails into an initiative that's very important to me at Buffalo State, and that is the creation of an innovation suite within Butler Library, helping to transform the library from a place where you go to access knowledge to a place of creativity where new knowledge is created. This past summer 2025, June, we opened up the Alex F. Osborne Brainstorming Room, which is a purpose-built room for creative collaboration. Tim and the Modern Corporation, which he'll share with you, they are the first corporate group to use that space. And so I immediately grabbed this session so I could moderate this and tee up the fact that this space is now available. Tim is one of the first to really give it a good test drive. Hopefully he'll comment on that and also take us into his experience at facilitating change in the Modern Corporation. And so with that, Tim, I turn the microphone over to you, sir.
Thank you, Gerard. And just to build on part of that introduction, Gerard rescued me. He was one of the first people to help me complete my master's project. As many of us know, you get toward that point, and sometimes you get stuck. And he and I successfully got me unstuck. So I'm forever grateful for Gerard's help with that as my faculty advisor. And has also been a good friend, and hopefully we'll continue to cheer for the Bills and the Sabres together as we like to do. Um, I'm honored to be here. I think that being a member of this global creativity community is continues to be a source of pride and joy for me. I never feel like I'm alone in the work that I do or the interests that I pursue in this area of creativity. So this is a real good thing for me to do today. I'm very happy to be here. I've been a practitioner in the field for over 30 years. And one of the things that I often have mentioned to some of my colleagues is that sometimes, very rarely, do we get to see the impact of the work that we do. As consultants, you come in, you help to understand what their current reality is and what they want to do toward the future, and we facilitate that. But sometimes we don't actually see the results. I've been in a couple of situations where I've worked for several years with the same client, but then something changes in the leadership, new person comes in, they say goodbye to the old consultant attached to the old guard, and you never know what the impact of your work has been. This particular story that I want to share with you today is one of those rare occasions where you get to see the fruit that is born from your efforts to grow and to help change occur. So I really like sharing this story because of that. Also in the title, I've got lessons from the field. I think there's a lot of learning that goes on in projects like this as well, and I've learned a lot about change, about what it takes to create the conditions for change to happen in a positive and successful way. And I hope we have the time to share some of those lessons that you've experienced as well. I'm thinking probably at midpoint we'll pause for some opportunity to share insights or answer some questions that you might have. And then also at the end, I'm hoping that we have some time to connect the dots and talk about things that we're learning as we're going through this session. Um, First question I'm wondering, just before we roll into this, is are there, um, uh, well, let me rephrase. If if many of us who work in this field are working on change initiatives, and I presume that many of you are, and maybe we can use the chat room for this. Um, what are some of the barriers that you have run into that get in the way of success in helping to lead change effectively? So if you could throw that in the chat, maybe Gerard, you can help. Let me see if I can find
Well,
it
the first
too.
comment is a brilliant comment. It's lack of leadership support. Oh, wait, that was my comment. Um,
Well, that's a good one.
Kyle says people hating change. Patty says previous missteps with change
Mhm.
management. Jose says finding the free knowledge. D says harder to influence change when not being the decision maker.
Mhm. Well, those are all
Patty also chimed in again. No clear stakeholder identified.
great. Not that that's a great situation, but these are
A
great
great
examples.
example. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to pick up on some of these, and we're going to go through this. I'm going to I'm going to walk through the experience. It's a 2.5 year journey so far, but I've encountered a lot of that myself over the years. If leadership, I think it was trying to think of the guy I'm thinking of. Anyway, in the literature on change leadership, I think this is the number one barrier that people identify, right? That unless you have a strong leadership coalition to support change efforts, they're likely to not go very far. Unless the change is initiated and sponsored from the top, efforts to do that from the middle sometimes get rejected and soon replaced by something else. So a lot of what I'm going to focus on today is the role of leadership in supporting the change and also owning it. I think the decision making and the sharing of knowledge, new ideas, all of that stuff really falls into this story. So let me get us started there. Everybody see this?
Yeah. Opening slide,
Okay.
lessons from the field.
Yeah, you can see we're in the field there. So
yeah.
Here are some objectives I had put together for this. I want, obviously, I think I described this, but to present a case example of the current change management initiative with a local organization. I'll start out by giving you some context about the business that we're talking about, but I think it's relatable for those of you working with larger companies or even small organizations. Some of the same issues I think you can relate to. Wow, what's going on here? There we go. Discuss the importance of establishing and maintaining trust among the key stakeholders. I will begin early on talking about my efforts to understand the current reality in this organization, and the biggest issue that we had was low trust. And so without it, we know that when we study teams, right, that effective team behaviors really are all based on trust at the foundation. And I think this is true organization wide. And we'll talk about that. Part of what needed to be done and updated as I joined this organization as a board member was noticing that their vision and values were completely useless to the members of the organization. They hadn't been updated in quite some time. And asking people what they were, people had a hard time remembering what they were. So it was really a lesson in the importance of working towards a clear and a detailed, actually, vision of the future that they want to move towards in order to pull us in that direction. We'll talk a bit about that. And finally, the role of creative thinking and creative process has been huge. Liberating, I would say, for many of these people, because for many of them, it was new. They didn't even know that the field existed. So I'll talk a little bit about the role of CPS in what the work that we're doing, and the role of foresight in how that was helpful to have the leadership team work much better together than they had been. So that's where I hope we go. I just have to eliminate that message. Okay, so this is a story. Let me ask Steve to leave again. Okay, this is a story about garbage.
Did you say it's a garbage story?
It's a garbage story, yes. It's a story about garbage because Modern Disposal Services, or Modern Corporation, which is the parent company, is a waste management organization. It's been around for 60 years, and I want to give a little bit of a background about it, but just to remind us about what it is that we do when we talk about waste management. If you think about it, and I just checked this statistic today, we produce in the U.S., I'm talking about American population, we produce 5 pounds of garbage per day of waste. And that amounts to 9 tons of garbage per year per person. That's a lot of garbage. And if you can imagine, where would we be if we didn't have waste management as a service? We'd be up to our ears in waste. Laura and I've had a chance to do some travel around the world, and we've gone to some places where they don't have an effective waste management system, and it's pretty appalling to see what life would be like if we didn't have this as an essential service in our lives. So it is an essential service, like fire, like police, like emergency room, emergency healthcare. And if we think about it that way, it's important that we pay attention to not only what we do with it when it leaves our hands and goes into our bin and gets collected, and hopefully we assume that it's recycled and handled properly. There's a lot of work involved. Um, so here's Steve Wishuta and standing by his truck. This is back in the 60s, early 60s. Steve started off with two trucks hauling anything that he could haul, right? It could be equipment, it could be materials for construction, whatever required a truck to move things around. Steve was making a business doing that. And then he realized shortly after that waste management was an endless revenue stream, that people need to pay to handle waste that we produce, whether it's commercial or residential. It's got to go somewhere, and somebody has to handle it, and somebody has to be responsible for sensibly and sustainably disposing of it. So he was onto it. Right now, we've got a company that's one of the largest and most profitable businesses in the Western New York area. It's family owned. It continues to be. Steve's no longer with us, but his company is in the hands of his two offspring. His son and daughter are still the owners, plus his wife. So it's family owned. It's one of the few large family owned businesses. We got 700 plus employees. There are 5 campuses. There's like 200 of these great vehicles that you see there. I think this was taken on the 4th of July. And you've got a full range of commercial, residential, solid waste, recycling, landfill in 5 campuses across Western New York and Southern Ontario. It's a big operation. It's also a business that's highly competitive. You've got a lot of big players in the field, like Waste Management is a brand, right? Not just a category. They're huge. They dominate the field nationally. And so if you're a local family operation with 700, not 40,000 employees, you need to stay ahead of the competition in order to be viable and profitable. And you need to be creative if you're going to be fending off the competition. They have contracts with municipalities around Western New York. They handle waste management for the Bills and the Sabres, so big venues. I mean, there are many different kinds of things that they do, and you need to be creative to stay ahead of the competition. And that's one of the areas that I think they took their eye off of. They were not fostering an environment of creativity. So here's where I entered the picture. Let me see here. There's a little timeline here that illustrates what I've been doing with them. In October, end of October, early November, I was invited to join their board. They wanted to put a board of directors together to help them with the concerns that they were noticing, right? And as they had a CEO that they had lost confidence in. They noticed that the workplace environment was really, really becoming toxic, and that there was people experiencing a lot of stress. There was a lot of complaints. There was turnover. They wanted to move to create the change that they knew they needed to do. They wanted to come up with a new CEO. wanted to move away from the one that they had had for 7 years, who was brought on board after Steve Washuta passed away. And we were invited, myself and two other colleagues, to form a board and to begin the process of making some changes that they were desiring. So in January, shortly after that, we started interviewing executives. We formed a board, we formed a charter. We became an advisory board, not an operational board. That's a good distinction to make because we weren't making key decisions. We were simply giving them advice on what to do or what we felt was our best point of view for them. One thing that happened shortly after we were working on interviews for executives, not just the CEO, but a couple of other high positions had left as part of the turnover. We began, Lori, one of the owners, she had expressed her desire to make the organization more like the way it was when her father was running things. And it wasn't that way anymore. People were not feeling good about that being a place that they wanted to continue to work at. So that was her desired future. And as we know, in practicing creativity, you move from desired future, you need to start from a base of current reality. And I explained to her that I needed to find out what was going on in the minds of employees. So that happened before we hired the CEO, right? Because it takes a while sometimes to go through that process. Then in October, I started working diligently with the senior leadership team. That's what SLT stands for, and did some very interesting work, which I'll go into detail on. The process of working with them over time needed a little bit more contact, and so we continued to work. We continued to work on vision and values. We continued to work on the purpose of the team itself, and you'll see that, and also work on trust and how do we build it. We're now in the phase of action teams where I meet with them and they form teams to work on the challenges that we identify through using CPS. And I'll get into a little bit more on that here. Again, the owners identified a need to focus on workplace culture. I needed to understand that reality through this interview process. And the owners were very helpful in advising me who I might want to talk to, a cross section of the organization, not just at the top. And the themes that emerged here were quite striking. The trust was low within and across the units. Communication was uneven and not very well organized, so across the company as well as within departments. People were fearing change. They were afraid of what was going to happen with the CEO leaving and some new executives coming on board. Too many silos, and it seemed like leadership was not very effective, and it probably needed to be worked on. So again, once the positions were filled, people felt a little bit better about some of the uncertainty that they were working in. The team itself was very happy to engage in offsite team building activities, and it was pretty striking as to how quickly they took advantage of the opportunity to speak truth to power. And the power was a new CEO who was very open to listening because he was just starting as well. So we gained a lot of trust just by meeting. I think I remember building the ground rules for our session. And when I put up, what about Vegas rules, which for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, it means confidentiality, that what goes on in this session stays in this session. And people felt for the first time their ability to speak openly and honestly. Built a lot of trust. And also, when we started focusing on what's the company values, I think that was the first thing we looked at were the values. that was a remarkable session where people really saw a great deal of convergence um, around. I had two sub teams working on a task, and they both came up with almost the identical set values, which was remarkable. So we did a lot of work on refining those values, vetting them with employees. We shared the vision that we came up with for the future, and and really about updating the purpose and mission of the organization. And that really paid big dividends on the issue of trust as well as commitment. Once people had a clear sense of the direction, a clear sense of the expectations that they have of each other when they show up at work as leaders, it really changed the game in terms of how people viewed themselves. Um, and let me just share this. I just saw this the other day. Here's one thing that's happening now as a result. They are, I think this is called socializing the vision and values. They now have an organ. They're now reminding people that this is what we stand for as an organization, and it's everywhere. They are communicating it in multiple ways. But what I really like on the left, the Living the Values recognition program, um, every quarter they're giving up to three awards of employees who are nominated for being champions of these values. And it's quite interesting. I found out the other day that there are over 40 nominees for the first one that's going to be done in May. And people aren't like saying this is just stuff that's on the wall. People are looking for it. They're competing for it. And it's quite a nice initiative that came out of some of our senior leadership team sessions. And it's something that I believe that employees are seeing that the senior management are serious about this, and they expect people to follow their lead.
Tim, just to give you a time check to help, 14
Right.
minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's just go through this, and we'll save time at the end for questions, if you don't mind. The purpose that they worked on for the company is pretty crisp. It's memorable. It's not anything earth-shaking, but I think that this took several attempts to refine it, including employee contributions. So provide exceptional services to towns, companies, neighborhoods, and families in the region. And the vision was to be the region's leading environmental solutions provider, employer, and community steward. The word steward was a really strongly debated word, but it had a lot of heavy weight to it. And a lot of people have, these are also being socialized a lot throughout the company. Here's the innovation suite. This is the team. They're a happy team. They thoroughly enjoyed coming to Buff State to do this last session that we did together. And we did a lot of CPS here. We also spent a lot of time looking at their foresight profile, not only individually, but as a team. And that created another level of commitment to working together. It was really quite amazing. Here's where they were doing the foresight activity involving the prototyping, and they really took to it, took it seriously. The subsequent sessions, and we've done 4 now, I think we got another one coming up, has transitioned from me helping them learn about creativity and about CPS as a process. They lacked any kind of process before, which is quite remarkable. But after we got enough learning under our belt, they started taking on really core challenges that were important and were standing in the way of progress. And the way that we did it is to spend the time together, the time before the meetings, understanding the challenges that they felt were most important to work on. So we came in with some challenges sort of pre-selected. We spent a lot of time in ideation. And then after convergence at the ideation phase, we moved right into action teams, identifying cross-functional teams to work on these and actively come up with solutions to propose for the next meeting. So there was some pressure on everybody, not only to work together across their silos, which broke it down, and to collaborate, but to understand the best way that they can work together. And that's where foresight came in very, very handily. It raised awareness of the diversity that they brought in. It helped them to understand the process that they're using and how to communicate and collaborate more effectively. One thing I will share about the team profile is that there was not one individual other than the integrators, of which there were four. There was nobody with a high preference for ideation. And that was an interesting signal to me that, there's more work to be done here. There's more tools and techniques that need to be applied here to help them to get more comfortable with generating ideas and looking at alternatives. Right now, what we have is proactively looking at things rather than dealing with predicaments. They're now dealing more with opportunities. And here's some of the challenges we're now working on. How do we deal with the pace of change? So we're going to be coming up with a change management training program for managers. How do we develop the leadership skills of frontline supervisors that have been woefully, underdeveloped, and really bring up their skills? And how do we develop coaching skills for all managers so that they can change their style of how they work with the people in their organization, on their team? That's a fairly quick run through. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to stop in the middle, but we've got some time now to take a look at some of your comments, insights, or lessons learned.
Since we're a fairly small group, Tim, wondering if we can just have people flip their microphones on and pose their questions to you orally. Is that okay?
That's great.
Okay. So actually, Patty did submit a question, but Patty, I see you as well. Can you vocalize, since it's a small group? Why don't you go ahead, because you might elaborate or add color commentary to the question that you put in the chat box.
I think sometimes in larger corporations, it's really difficult when you have a decentralized workforce. You have collectors who are out in the streets and the trucks. You have people in maintenance garages and all over the place, not necessarily checking into their computers or the messaging that's going out. What were some of the ways that you channeled middle management or managed around that in terms of communicating the purpose and values and the change strategy?
Yeah, great question. Through the senior leadership team members, we felt that was the best channel. That was the best avenue for them to get their supervisors and managers to understand what the mission was here, and to create dialogue opportunities for people to listen more to what employees were going through, find out what was getting in the way, and actively come up with ways to overcome that. So, and also the CEO, Derek, he's a wonderful guy, great communicator, and he changed the communication office at Modern to be much more open and diligent about getting the information out to people and creating those feedback loops so that people felt like if they had concerns or objections, they could be understood and heard. So again, the management team picked up the ball on that.
Great. Good. Other questions or comments for Tim?
Yeah. What's your first step in building rapport with a room full of people who think you are just like absolutely out to lunch as somebody who's studied creativity? And because like the mustache can only do so much heavy lifting.
Yeah, I know. You look like you've experienced that. Well, I think being asked to be on the board gave us at least the illusion of authority and direct link to the owners. The fact that we had a good rapport with the CEO and the new incoming executives who we all interviewed and made the recommendations about who to hire. I think we had leverage there by being advisory board members. And each of us brought our own skills. My skills were mostly around organization development and innovation, but my colleagues were, a lawyer who would bring his perspective on legal issues. And it's a big company, millions and millions of revenue. So the accountant that has been working with them, he had that expertise. So we all had our ability collectively to influence the leadership, but also to work within different parts of the company to bring whatever credibility that we had, and that they could see that we were purposeful in what we were bringing to the team. Derek embraced the whole idea of innovation right away. So having his endorsement really helped a great deal. And as you may have experienced, when a new leader comes on board and there's a honeymoon, everybody is acting on their best. So people were giving us the benefit of the doubt, and they saw how the board and the CEO and the owners were working pretty collaboratively. Plus, we showed up on campus. We weren't like a remote group of people that the employees never saw. We were visible, more than just the meetings that I was doing with the leadership team, for example. I had lots of conversation with many of the managers that were struggling with their own issues in their own organizations. So that gave me a lot of credibility, as well as the other board members. Great question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And a comment. I work a lot also with big companies and corporations, and we know that it's so important to have an enlightened leader, right? Or CEO, as you said, that who can actually set the tone and the pace, and that seems like the case, right, of the CEO you were working for. What would you say generated a stronger commitment within the team? Because your title really talk about trust, right, commitment, and CPS, because commitment is so difficult to then create everybody really being there for it.
Okay, I think when I showed them the results of my interviews initially, my first attempt to get at the current reality, I think they saw how serious their job was, that this was their responsibility. It wasn't just a CEO who the owners lost confidence in. They saw that they were also lacking in their ability to think like a collective, to collaborate with each other. They saw the opportunity cost of continuing the way they were going, and that this company was not going to survive if they stayed on that same vector.
So it sounds like a crucial step, Tim, the interview. So can you say a bit more about the interviews? Was that strictly with the senior leadership team? How did you process those interviews? Extract meaning from the interviews, feed it back? Can you say a bit more?
We identified 12 people initially, and then we added 3 more as we were going. This was a cross section, right? So many of the members of the leadership team were involved, but also we went deeper into the organization to get more perspective from, a driver supervisor or the head of the mechanic, the maintenance department. We didn't just stay at the VP level. We went down. I actually interviewed some drivers. Sharing that information, I had to really edit it to make sure that people could hear what the conclusion, what the theme was that came out. So I did a standard protocol for all the interviews, did them all via Zoom or Teams, and presented it to them and allowed them to ask questions about the findings. So it was a pretty standard sensing interview. The question, the protocol, and the sequence of questions I vetted with the CEO and with the owners. So it had their approval as well. And they also did some modifications, added some things in there. It
Were they
was
surprised?
difficult.
Were they
Yeah,
surprised?
they knew that it was bad, but they didn't, when seeing the actual breakdown of where these challenges were about the need for more transparency, the need for better communication, the silos that had been built and ignored, they were like stunned, but said, yeah, we see it and we see the need to change it. So that, I think you're absolutely on target. That was the first breakthrough that said, we got to do something about this or we're going to die.
Right. So in change management, right, that creates a sense of urgency.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they started to listen.
They started to listen, and also having a new boss, a new sheriff in town, watching every move that everybody was making, and providing the support if they needed it. I think there was commitment that came out of that, but there was also some compassion that supported it from the owners and from the new CEO. So that really did help.
Patty, were you starting to respond to that as well?
Wondering, what was that the original problem statement, or what was the original hypothesis that you were either trying to go into the focus groups confirming, or where did you start and how did that evolve? I'm sure it did.
I let them know that, I'm not going to use your name, that this is going to be confidential, that I will scrub the results to ensure that no one can be backtracked. And again, like I said, with the senior leadership team, when they saw that the light was on that said we can say what we need to say, that gave the people doing the participating in the interviews a permission to do that. Within 2 days, I had when I sent out email requests to participate, they were all full. People were like, "Yeah, when do we start?" They couldn't wait. So they saw it as an opportunity to help shape the change that they all knew that they needed. And they were living in a stressful environment. They didn't want to do that anymore. So they were willing to participate in whatever positive change might come out of it. And they believed that we were going to do something about it because I brought this also to the board.
Yeah. So Tim, if you're open to follow-up questions, because we're a minute into break time. The next session starts in 14 minutes. Do you want to share contact information in the chat box?
Yep.
So that folks can follow up with you if they wish.
Absolutely.
And I'll just say to Kyle that good thing this is a free conference, because I see there's an extra attendee in your room. You got a four-legged friend there with you. So fun to see that happen. That only happens in virtual meetings, right? Where you get a look into people's world. So yeah, that was cute. Thanks for that entertainment moment, Kyle.
You're welcome. I do what I can.
Yeah. So Tim, thanks for the excellent presentation, the case study in terms of change. Congratulations to you on your success. Round of applause for Tim. And Tim, did you have a chance to drop in the chat box a way to contact you?
I've got a slide up there, but I need to share.
Oh, I see it. Okay, that's great. Yep.
And anybody, if you got any questions or you want to collaborate on a challenge that you're having a problem with, I'm very, very open to working with anybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tim. I'm going to close this room so I can take a short break and then get ready for the next concurrent session. Enjoy the remainder of the conference for the concurrent session block that's coming up, as well as we hope you will join us tomorrow. Again, same time, New York, Toronto time. We start the keynote at 10 o'clock, virtual coffee at 9:30 to 10. Hope to see you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Tim.